Imagine reaching the pinnacle of all sorcery with your given crest at birth, only to willingly restart life and reincarnate, successfully acquiring the strongest crest out of the four, but at the cost of being placed in the distant future as a student. Following our MC Matthias Hildesheimer, we see him riding on a carriage towards the capital to take the entrance exam at age 12, but is warned by the driver that his crest is regarded as the weakest of the four. Out of nowhere, Matthias detects a monster approaching, warning the driver to pull over, but the driver brushes off Matthias's warning. Right on cue, a calamity-type beast appears, frightening the driver. But in an instant, Matthias dispatches the creature with an enhanced body and a sword. Having been dropped off at the capital, Matthias is amazed at the modern feel the city gives off compared to his homeland. But Matthias suddenly hears some shouting nearby. Entering a store, Matthias spots a girl, Alma Lapucius, begging for her friend's magic sword to be repaired, but the blacksmith says such a repair is not possible. Browsing the swords on display, Matthias is impressed by the build quality of the blades, disappointed that the enchantments are poorly applied. As Alma continues to beg the blacksmith for any alternatives, she says she's looked everywhere for a long sword that can be light enough to swing around with one hand. With the blacksmith turning down Alma's request once more, Matthias speaks up, offering to help out. The blacksmith asks Matthias to not show off, pointing out that Matthias's crest of failure will do him no good with enchantments. But Alma feels something strange from Matthias, choosing to purchase a sword for one magistone. As the two sit down, they formally introduce themselves, with Alma mentioning how she ran away from home to avoid being married off by her family. Alma chooses to call Matthias Maddie, revealing that the sword she needs is for her friend from her hometown, leaning in close only to fluster Matthias, seeing her so energetic. At that moment, Lurie Aventrad appears, dazzling Matthias as he stiffens up, but surprisingly Lurie also becomes flustered, laying eyes on Matthias. Breaking the tension, the blacksmith returns with a newly forged sword, borrowing a magistone only to begin his enchantment. Seeing as the sword needs to be light and sturdy, Matthias gets to work casting several spells on the sword, surprising everyone when they hear Matthias has finished in mere seconds without chanting anything. Skeptical, Lurie asks to test out the sword, but having accidentally glided the blade along their table, the gang noticed the blade had split the table into two. The blacksmith confirms that Matthias didn't use any trickery to swap out the swords, asking if Matthias wants to be an enchanter, but having refused the offer, we cut to the beginning of the entrance exam. Starting with the practical skills, the instructors state that the exam will consist of swordsmanship and casting, but following Matthias, we see him chatting with Lurie only to spot Alma sad she found the tactics portion of the exam hard. With Lurie tested first, she easily parries the examiner's blade, terrifying them when they see their sword had been severed, ultimately passing Lurie. Next up, Matthias is called, standing before the captain of the Knights, Guile, who states he'll pass Matthias if he wins their duel, having found out that Matthias was the one that enchanted Lurie's blade. With the duel starting, Matthias spots Guile enter a strange stance, insulted as Guile is looking down on him. Choosing to prove him otherwise, Matthias dashes towards Guile, swiftly casting a spell as he manages to parry Guile's lethal slash. With Guile impressed, Matthias and Guile exchange several more strikes, but as Matthias casts several more spells on his blade, Matthias ends up disarming Guile, forcing Guile to admit defeat. Moving on to the casting exam, Lurie is once again asked to go first, instructed to strike down 5 targets with a fire arrow. Taking a deep breath, Lurie activates her Crest of Glory, easily casting simultaneous fire arrows, but Matthias wonders why Lurie is using incanted casting. Matthias states that incanted casting has terrible conversions from input to output, plus casters are vulnerable when chanting. Matthias also notes that the Crest of Glory is highly compatible with incanted casting, whereas his Crest of Failure has limited range for spells. Next up, Matthias is asked to attack the same 5 targets, but asks if he could choose any spell as long as he destroys the target. Pitying Matthias's Crest of Failure, the examiner allows any spell, prompting Matthias to begin conjuring a devastating spell. Without a word uttered, Matthias manages to destroy the targets along with the training area, blowing everyone away. Officially passing, Matthias suits up for the opening ceremony, meeting up with Luri and Alma, only for Matthias to become speechless seeing Luri's outfit. As the opening ceremony starts, Headmaster Edward states he could care less about lineage or Crest strength like their rival sister academy, and instead states that at his academy, they evaluate students based on their skills. Having kept the speech short and sweet, Edward asks to speak with Matthias privately, freaking Matthias out as he fears he'll get expelled for destroying the school during his exam. Easing Matthias, Edward states he was impressed to learn about Matthias's feats during the entrance exam, curious as to how Matthias got so strong. Edward promises to not pry into Matthias's life, but in exchange asks for Matthias's help. Edward states that wordless casting is a lost style, revealing that Matthias himself may be the last ever person to have perfected such a technique. But when Matthias offers to teach others, Edward states that their rival sister academy is preventing such a thing. Apparently, the sister academy is known as the First Royal Academy, a school dictated by nobles, and due to their influence, Edward's Second Royal Academy must follow the First Academy's rules. Matthias wonders what's so special about First Academy, handed a book filled with research into incanted spells that the First Academy published, but Edward does mention that they can shed light on wordless casting if their school does well in the next inter-school competition. Edward personally asks Matthias to help educate his students, a request Matthias is happy to fulfill, immediately heading out as Matthias holds his first class on wordless casting. Giving a demonstration, Matthias enhances his body, leaping into the air only to blow away several targets. But this makes his fellow students accuse Matthias of being some sort of demon. Luckily, the teachers vouch for Matthias, showing off their own wordless cast combined with a sword, convincing the students to give it a go. Working into the evening, Matthias is happy to see Alma and Luri are slowly getting the hang of things, but notices Luri needs to take a break seeing as her mana is drained. Luri points out the other students are learning quickly, wondering why wordless casting had been lost for so long, something Matthias questions as well. Changing topics, Matthias asks Luri to place her hand out, choosing to share some of his magic with Luri, only to successfully teach all of his fellow students wordless casting in the coming days. With a month passing, we cut to the inter-school tournament where Luri gets nervous about magically chosen ones, students that always represent First Academy and have strong casting power. Alma adds that the previous captain of the Mage's Order was a chosen one, but out of nowhere Matthias detects an abnormal being with 10 times his magical power, a being Matthias knows to be a demon. With Matthias confirming that demons are still humanity's natural enemy, Matthias heads out onto the arena alone, immediately shunned for housing the Crest of failure. Matthias hears the 3 opposing students declare themselves to be housing Devielise, the chosen one. But at the same time, the headmaster of the First Academy proudly declares they'll be claiming their 65th win against the Second Academy. As Devielise mocks Matthias, Matthias easily sees through Devilice's disguise, detecting his demon body through a spell. As the 65th inter-school tournament begins, Lasis and Jayas rush Matthias, but in an instant Matthias blows the boys back, forcing Devielise to defend with a barrier. Annoyed, Devielise prepares a spell, but accidentally forgets to chant the spell, revealing his wordless casting. Seeing an opening, Matthias rushes forward with his blade, aiming for Devilice's head, but having leapt back, Devielise once again forgets to chant his spell. With Matthias and Devielise exchanging blows, Matthias confirms that demons have infiltrated First Academy long ago and was responsible for removing wordless casting along with marking the 4th Crest of Failure as the weakest crest. With Devielise failing to land a strike on Matthias, Matthias chooses to enchant his blade, cutting Devielise slightly, only to shatter the spell disguising him. With his demon features exposed, Edward calls for everyone to evacuate, but Devielise gets pissed. Having chosen to blast Matthias with a spell, Matthias easily deflects the spell, watching as Devielise prepares to take off, but having anticipated such a thing, Matthias blinks in close, cutting Devielise down. Having destroyed his blade, Matthias reveals that in his former life, he was the great sage Gaius and had dedicated his life to eradicate demons, but it seems the demons are making their comeback. As several guards rush to secure the demon's body, Luri hugs Matthias for being so brave, but Alma calls the two out for flirting so openly. Having heard of Matthias slaying a demon, the king summons Edouard and Matthias, asking Edouard to be more casual, seeing as they're old friends. The king states he wants to give Matthias some land, something Matthias doesn't want. But luckily the king wants to keep Matthias's achievements a secret, feeling embarrassed that a demon managed to infiltrate their country. As an alternative, the king offers to give Matthias a sword with double enchantments from a blacksmith. But Matthias knows he created the sword for the blacksmith, instead asking to be granted access to the dungeon's resources. Matthias knows that the resources found in a dungeon along with the monster drops will easily surpass any reward given to him, something the king immediately grants, only to ask for Matthias's opinion on the state of the kingdom. The king reveals that the 4 magical chosen ones guarding the kingdom have vanished, one of which is the last captain of the magic order, Erhard, but Matthias wonders if they are all demons. The king adds that magical chosen ones appeared several hundred years ago, the same time Matthias left the world to reincarnate, but the king wonders if Matthias unmasking a demon has scared all the others away. Sadly, Matthias states that the demons have fled to regather their forces for an all-out attack, something Matthias predicts will take 3 months, horrifying the king. Matthias starts off by suggesting a barrier is erected over the kingdom using a divine class artifact. Plus, if Second Academy works together, they can finish preparations in a month. With the king ordering to allow the teaching of wordless magic, the king puts his full trust in Matthias, giving him access to the kingdom's vault. Needing mithril and orichalcum magistones to create the barrier, Matthias looks around, spotting a strange sword only to recognize it as the blade he wielded in his previous life, choosing to claim along with a pendant he used in his previous life as well. As Matthias continues to train his peers, he tells Luri and Alma that he'll be heading into the dungeon to retrieve some resources, realizing that dungeon dives are always better with a party. Nervously, Matthias asks if the girls would like to join his party. Surprised the girls are down for anything, but Luri does point out that Alma's use of a blade is lacking compared to her bow skills. As a bonus lesson, Matthias takes out a bow, infusing his arrow with magic, only to decimate the target before him. Matthias states that Alma's Crest of Standard synergizes well with magical archery, advising that Alma play into her strengths and use a bow in the dungeon. Jealous, Luri asks if she can enchant things as well, excited to hear the hero Crest favors enchantments over actual combat, but gets embarrassed seeing she was overreacting a second ago. Seeing as his 4th Crest will act as the tank, Alma is the sniper and Luri's first Crest acts as a support. Our trio immediately head to the dungeon beneath the academy. Matthias explains that dungeons will have different monsters from floor to floor, running off to retrieve a weak monster, only to ask Alma to practice her magical archery on the monster. Infusing her arrow with magic, Alma decimates the little monster, only to be instructed to try a different magic spell. This time, Alma concentrates on the arrow she is releasing, surprised to see the arrow hunt down another monster. An attack Matthias utters a thread-guided enchantment. Matthias sets Alma the goal of hitting 2 targets at once with her arrows, sending Alma off as he reminds her to collect the magistones dropped from slaying monsters. Now alone, Luri gets excited to learn enchanting from Matthias, hearing that Matthias wants her to learn to create her own weapons first, so she can practice her enchantments on. Stopping near a wall, Matthias shatters the wall with a spell, showing off that the dungeon's wall is filled with metals they can extract. First off, Matthias instructs Luri to extract the iron and mithril from the stone they gathered, only for Matthias to teach Luri how to craft weapons and enchant them, seeing as she is a fast learner. Following Alma, she is able to take down 3 enemies with a single arrow, choosing to head back seeing that she's collected a lot of magistones. Surprisingly, Alma stumbles onto Luri testing out her newly enchanted swords, amazed that Luri's blades can tear holes in the dungeon walls. Seeing as they're ready, Matthias sets the goal of reaching the 10th floor, wanting to test out how much the girls have grown. Entering the 2nd floor, our trio are swarmed with several slug monsters, prompting Luri to blast them with a fire spell. When Luri's spell doesn't work, Alma simply skewers them with her tracking arrows. Both working together, Alma continues firing away at their enemies, all whilst Luri restocks Alma's arrows. Having purposely worn his pendant in the dungeon, Matthias reveals that the pendant equally shares the experience point gathered, but just then a killer dog appears. Seeing the dog disappear, Matthias wonders if he should help the girls out, but seeing Luri erect a firewall to stall the dog, Alma manages to land successive blows to pin down and slay the beast. Matthias is amazed at the girls' teamwork, suggesting that they set up camp to rest, only to infuse a Magistone with his mana to project a barrier for the girls. As for Matthias himself, he tells the girls he'll be heading to the deeper floors to gather some adamantite, curious as to how strong his new body is. When the girls hear that Matthias is heading to floor 25, they remind Matthias that even the 30-man party, under the protection of the mighty mage Gaius, only ever reached floor 33. Regardless, Matthias begins to descend, choosing to skip past the weaker monsters to conserve his magic, managing to stock up on some rock-infused adamantite. Before Matthias can leave, he detects the aura of the floor boss nearby, rushing towards the boss lair as he finally gets to have some fun. Encountering various monsters, Matthias easily wipes out the swarm, scanning the area only to suddenly dodge a projectile, laying eyes on an arc serpent. Seeing the creature dive towards him, Matthias has no choice but to evade, noting the serpent's venom as he must finish off the boss before the toxic fumes affect him. Getting pumped, Matthias watches the boss charge once more, choosing to cut off one of the serpent's scales, only to allow himself to get eaten. Inside the belly of the beast, Matthias unleashes an explosion spell to break free, following up by triple enchanting his blade only to run it along the exterior of the serpent. Seeing the serpent still standing, Matthias shatters a Magistone before the serpent's eyes, gathering the particles into his blade only to decapitate the monster with a single slash. As the dungeon quakes from Matthias's attack, we see two demons, Arias and Erhard, skeptical of who could have caused such a tremor. Returning to the girls, Matthias apologizes for scaring them, revealing that he had slain a massive monster only to unveil the head of the serpent he just slayed. Heading to a guild, our trio receive dirty stares, learning from the receptionist that Second Academy students have been completing monster hunts recently. Seeing Matthias's weakest crest, the receptionist mistakes Matthias to be a porter. But when Matthias unveils the serpent head he's come to sell, the receptionist turns white. Having only heard of storage spells, the receptionist shyly asks what else Matthias would like to sell, watching as Matthias takes out a massive Magistone, an item that could be classified as a national treasure. With the receptionist trading 750 gold for all the loot, Matthias agrees to split the cash 250 each, suddenly asking the girls to return to the academy with him. As the girls also detect a strange aura nearby, we cut to two demons, Lord Ashrill and D-Shrill, floating above the kingdom, both curious as to who the child that defeated Devilis is. Matthias utters that one of the demons is quite weak, whereas the other is stronger than a devil. Matthias asks for the girls to distract the weaker one whilst he takes on the stronger one, something the girls agree to, not wanting Matthias to shoulder all the burden. Back with the demons, they state that they'll begin casting a spell from above, but in an instant Matthias appears in front of D-Shrill, attempting to sever his head but has his sword parried. Leaping back, Matthias reminds himself to be careful around demons, asked if he was the one who slayed Devilis. Seeing Ashrill prepare a fire spell, Matthias leaps to avoid the spell, choosing to use up half of his mana in order to cast some control spheres. Having taken over Ashrill's fire spell, Matthias tries burning the demons to no avail, mentioning how his sphere can't block physical attacks. At that moment, D-Shrill is struck by one of Alma's enchanted arrows, temporarily disrupting the demon's magic control and slowing them down. With D-Shrill sent to deal with the girls, Ashrill focuses on Matthias, beginning to chant a monstrous spell. Matthias admits that his control sphere won't be able to deal with such a massive spell, instead choosing to cancel the incantation by firing a small projectile at the spell's weak point, shocking Ashril. Leaping forward, Matthias manages to slash Ashril, but Ashril simply regenerates angrily, equipping a blade of his own. Charging at Matthias, Ashril wonders why his blade isn't reaching Matthias, watching as Matthias dances circles around the demon only to land a slash from behind. Seeing Ashril flying away, Matthias uses his control spheres to disable Ashril's flight spell, following up by landing another strike. Going on the offense, Matthias prepares to cut Ashril down, only to realize Ashril had lured him in with a concealed cast he had prepared. Forced to sacrifice his control spheres, Matthias trades blows with Ashril, watching as Ashril prepares to take flight once more only to reveal his trump card. Having trapped Ashril in an occlusion orb, Matthias uses Ashril's own mana against him, clipping Ashril out of the sky and sending him plummeting to the town below. Before Matthias can approach Ashril, Matthias quickly seals away Ashril's final spell, knowing that Ashril was ready to give his life to summon a horde of monsters. Back with the girls, Alma is seen firing enchanted tracking arrows to weaken D-Shrill, only to retreat to stall for time, allowing Matthias to pick up where the girls left off. When D-Shrill refuses to believe that Matthias single-handedly took out Ashril, Matthias casts a light spell, tricking D-Shrill into believing Matthias can cast the instant-kill demon spell. Scared, D-Shrill flies off, prompting Matthias to order Alma to fire an arrow, enchanting it with his own magic to ensure the arrow severs one of D-Shrill's wings. Following up, Matthias dispatches D-Shrill as well, drawing the attention of onlookers that wonder who our trio are. Not liking the attention, Matthias reminds the girls to always escape through the enemy's ranks when surrounded, choosing to pick up the girls as he flees with them. The next day, our trio are brought before the king, who offers Matthias another reward for catching 2 more demons. Seeing as Matthias doesn't need any more items from the kingdom's treasury and plans on leaving the academy once the barrier is created, Matthias asks for access to more dungeons, a request the king promises to fulfill. As for the girls, Alma and Luri ask for lots of money, something the king happily agrees to, but at that moment Matthias detects someone spying on them. Calling out to the intruder, Matthias states he knows someone is spying on them, choosing to destroy the perpetrator's surveillance spell, which harms the culprit, but the king recognizes the culprit's voice as Erhardt, the former captain of the Mage's Order. Matthias states that the demons have been spying on the king all this time, mentioning how the surveillance spells came from west and north of them, locations the king recognizes as villages that have been destroyed by demons. Seeing as Matthias has uncovered the hiding places of some demons, Matthias admits that he can't use his teleportation magic at the moment, something that surprises no one since Matthias is capable of such advanced magic. Searching for another form of transportation, our trio heads up some mountains, remarking how Edward had personally volunteered to help gather the resources needed for the kingdom's barrier. Having reached the height of the mountains, Matthias shows off Iris, the darkness dragon slumbering, asking the girls to wait as Matthias heads to negotiate with the beast. Matthias reveals that in his past life, Iris was one of the dragons he fought in the past and let go. As Matthias marches towards Iris, she suddenly awakens, demanding that Matthias leave her alone, but when Matthias continues to approach her, Iris begins casting her dragon's breath. In an instant, Matthias dispels Iris's breath, telepathically telling Iris that he is Gaius reincarnated. Shocked, Iris apologizes for attacking Matthias, hearing that Matthias needs a ride, seeing as his new Crest won't allow him to use teleportation magic yet. Before Matthias can call the girls to come over, Iris shows off her destroyed wings, having been caught up in several magic reactor explosions that forced humans to reset to the Stone Age shortly after Gaius disappeared. Luckily, Matthias can still heal Iris's wings, asking Iris to keep his past a secret as he introduces Iris to the girls. As Iris takes off with our trio, she laments it's been 5,000 years since she's last flown, but before Iris can accelerate to their destination, Matthias orders Iris to halt. Iris utters that she was going to fly as fast as Reuter could handle, one of Gaius's old friends, But hearing that name, Alma and Luri recognize Reuter to be the god of sword alongside the legendary mage Gaius and the infamous darkness dragon from the tales. As a compromise, Matthias orders Iris to fly at 1/500th of her regular speed as to not damage her newly healed wings, all heading towards the demon's hideout. Arriving at a mist-filled town, Matthias gets to work dispatching a demon on lookout, confirming that 2 other demons are present, one being Erhardt and another being even stronger. At that moment, Iris cries for Matthias to move, accidentally flying into the demon's hideout. But luckily Iris has carved an entrance for our trio to enter, all 3 preparing to enter the hideout. Just to make sure, Matthias begins communicating with the girl through telepathy, handing them a magic circle only to ask that the girls take the lead when attacking. More prepared than ever, the trio head into a different room, wondering where the demons can be, but suddenly Matthias asks the girls to be quiet, stating that the enemy is using a concealment spell. Matthias utters that concealment spells hides one's magic power, asking the girls to focus only for them to realize a demon is hiding in the nearby corner. With Matthias disrupting the concealment spell, Alma readies her bow, firing off an arrow that hits Erhardt directly in the head. Sadly, a mere arrow has no effect on Erhardt, only enraging him as he accuses Matthias of being an imposter. As Erhardt rushes Matthias, Matthias simply stalls him with his blade, allowing Alma to begin raining arrows on Erhardt, but Erhardt simply persists with his attacks. A few seconds later, Erhardt notices Matthias easily evading his attacks, realizing the arrows Alma had dug into him had been infused with Luri's toxin enchantment, a spell that begins slowing down Erhardt's brain. As a last-ditch effort, Erhardt suddenly erupts with power, a spell Matthias recognizes as Disfortune. Apparently, Disfortune is a demon's trump card, having sacrificed all his remaining magical power in exchange for a temporary power and strength boost. Choosing to target the girls, Erhardt chases the girls whilst Matthias orders them to run, but having caught up, Erhardt swipes at an illusion, a spell Matthias had cooked up. Before Erhardt can do anything else, Alma finishes Erhardt with a final arrow to the skull, all 3 celebrating as the girls take out their first demon. Getting serious, Matthias orders the girls to retreat for now with Iris, wanting to face the second demon alone. Taking out 3 Magistones, Matthias begins crushing them only to scatter their dust into the air, a technique that forces the second demon to appear having shed its mist form. With Ares impressed, Matthias took down Erhardt already. Ares leaps forth, aiming for Matthias's head, but Matthias simply parries, noting how strong Ares is. Out of nowhere, Ares' hand extends, aiming to sever Matthias's sword-wielding hand, laughing as Ares asks how Matthias would like to die. Matthias admits he did underestimate Ares, but having stalled long enough, Matthias suddenly reattaches his arm, declaring that he's analyzed Ares' technique. With Ares extending his arm several more times, he fails to surprise Matthias this time, sweating profusely as he realizes Matthias had purposely let his arm be cut off. Rushing in for a slash, Matthias begins infecting Ares with a toxin similar to Erhardt's, but seeing no choice, Ares casts Magic Circuit Overclock, a more advanced version of Disfortune. As Ares prepares to end Matthias, Matthias simply negates Ares' overclock spell, pissing him off as he suddenly fills the air with mist. Sadly, Matthias once again negates Ares' mist spell, revealing that he has completely analyzed all of the demon's attacks and can negate them at any moment. Out of nowhere, the toxin Matthias placed in Ares forces the demon to begin absorbing the magic in the surrounding air, a toxin that will force Ares to explode. With Matthias adding more magic into the air, Ares begins swelling, releasing a massive explosion that leaves behind a massive Magistone. When Matthias heads over to inspect the Magistone, he suddenly turns to catch Luri, having been worried Matthias would be injured. As for the stone left behind, Matthias deems it the Dragon Veil Pillar, an item that can be used to summon 4,000 of monsters from the dungeon. The girls realize the demons are planning to swarm the capital with thousands of creatures, but luckily, due to Ares' implosion, Matthias has managed to relocate the monster's spawn point elsewhere, but they'll still need the Academy's help. Riding back on Iris, Matthias suggests that Iris convert to her human form so that way they can stick together for the foreseeable future. Liking the idea, Iris lands in a nearby forest, suddenly compressing her body into a human body, but Luri and Alma rush to avert Matthias's eyes, seeing as Iris is naked. Heading to Edouard's office, Matthias shows off the horns he retrieved from Erhardt's corpse, something that makes Edouard speechless. Changing topics, Matthias asks for Eris to be accepted as a student, but Edouard says only under the condition that she takes the entrance exam like everyone else, something Matthias gladly accepts. Just in case, Matthias asks to sit in on her exam, knowing that Iris may not be able to control her compressed power just yet and may end up wiping away the Academy. As the gang head to bed, Matthias states he'll tell the Academy about the Dragon Vein and horde of monsters after Iris's exam, reminded to give Iris a fake crest as to blend in better. The next day, Iris sits before the written portion of the exam, taking her time inspecting the quill and ink provided. Next up, Gal takes charge with assessing Iris's swordplay, but as their duel starts, Iris accidentally drops her sword. Asking for a redo, Iris rushes to pick up her blade, nonchalantly grabbing Guile's sword when he tries to sneak up from behind. Having retrieved her blade, Iris sends Guild flying, but luckily Matthias had erected a barrier to protect Guile from Iris's sheer strength. Finally is the casting exam, but as Iris makes her first cast, Matthias is forced to erect another barrier, seeing as Iris's spell had randomly flown towards them. Trying again, Iris's spell misfires once more, this time exploding in the sky. As a last-ditch effort, Iris infuses her spell into the ground, completely tearing apart the training ground, but having destroyed the targets as required, Edouard passes Iris. Heading into the dungeon, Edouard shows off the resources they've gathered so far, but remarks that they need more Crests of Glory users to help with refining ores, but most of them are in First Academy. Although Second and First Academy have always been rivals, Edouard reasons he could get the king to persuade First Academy, cutting to several days later where Headmaster Ficus storms into Edouard's office, insulted that he was summoned by someone lower than him. Edouard states that there is no true hierarchy among them headmasters, but Ficus reminds Edouard he has more Crest of Glory students. Getting down to business, Edouard asks Ficus to lend him some Crest of Glory users, something Ficus immediately refuses, prompting Edouard to remind Ficus that Second Academy defeated First in the tournament. When Ficus says that demons ruined the event, Edouard reiterates that the demon was a First Academy student, something Ficus can't deny. Speaking up, Matthias says they should hold another competition with both schools, sending as many students as they like, and the winner can ask anything of the loser. Ficus likes the idea, but on the condition that Matthias himself doesn't participate, something Matthias confidentially agrees to. As 2 days pass, we cut to the competition day, where Matthias, Edouard, and Iris all observe the horde of First Academy students. But luckily Matthias won't need to call on Iris, seeing as there are no demons in the crowd. With Ficus showing up, he proudly declares his team to contain the most elite Crest of Glory students. Shocked to see that Second Academy has elected 5 students, 1 with the Crest of Failure, 2 Crest of Standard, and 2 with the Crest of Lesser. As the duel starts, First Academy students all simultaneously begin chanting their spells. But in mere moments, Second Academy students barrage their enemies with wordless chants, eradicating them before the horde can fight back. In mere moments, Second Academy are deemed the winners, something Ficus refuses to accept. Searching for any excuse, Ficus demands that Iris herself show off her skills. But upon handing her Edouard's blade, Iris crumples the blade with minimum efforts, frightening Ficus. Having heard enough, Edouard reminds Ficus that the king had ordered for wordless casting to be reinstated, something Ficus refuses to listen to as his ego forces him to stick with the old ways of chanting. At that moment, the king himself appears, ordering Ficus to be taken away, marking Ficus as a traitor to his words. Bringing the hammer down, the king himself orders the students of First Academy to learn wordless casting and work with Second Academy, something that excites Matthias. Having the first Academy students immediately get to work, Matthias and his party head into the dungeon to gather Magistone to create the core of the barrier. Alma points out that they need a Magistone 60 centimeter in size, but Matthias states that it'll be easy, turning to Iris herself only to utter that Iris carries a stone 80 centimeter in size. With Iris freaked out, Matthias reassures Iris he would never slay her, revealing that they'll be summoning a monster on par with Iris's strength. Venturing deeper into the dungeon, Matthias has Alma and Luri train the battle sense, but gets worried seeing Iris is still unable to control her strength. When Alma and Luri voice how difficult it is to be on the 17th floor, Iris utters that she knew someone who ventured into the 654th floor, someone Matthias knows was his former self. Finding an isolated location, Matthias asks Luri to draw a summoning circle around a Magistone, helping Luri calm herself as they perfect the circle. With Alma teasing the two lovebirds, Matthias calls for Iris to slowly infuse her magic into the circle, but in mere seconds, a powerful force erupts from the summoning circle. Having pumped in too much magic, Iris is ordered to pull away, making Matthias worry they may have summoned a creature greater than the floor can handle. As the gang run for cover, the surrounding area begins to crumble, but from the summoning circle, a massive dragon appears. With Iris rushing to take on the beast, she is easily swiped away by the dragon, cursing at the dragon, which only infuriates it further. Seeing as Iris is keeping the dragon distracted, Luri enchants an arrow for Alma, who fires them onto the dragon, but gets shocked seeing the dragon continue to hunt down Iris. As the girls continue to barrage the dragon, Matthias rushes to set up several casting circles, having Iris protect the girls when the dragon suddenly switches targets. Pissed, the dragon attacks Iris, but Iris manages to run onto the dragon to stall it further, attempting to block the dragon's claw with her palms, but is ultimately smashed into the ground. Having survived the dragon's attack, Iris wonders why the dragon hasn't unleashed its breath, something Matthias reveals was due to him blocking the dragon's casting. Knowing that arrows and toxins won't harm dragons, Matthias states he can't have Iris transform into a dragon and fight, opting to use an alternative plan to take down the beast. With preparations all set up, Matthias orders for Alma and Luri to retreat, only for Iris to bait the dragon into using its breath, rushing off as Matthias triggers the arrows and magic circles he had set up. Having planned to use the dragon's breath on itself, Matthias suddenly spots Iris trip, forcing Matthias to rush over to Iris, protecting her with a barrier. As the dragon's breath begins to swell and invert, Matthias is caught in the impact, but as the smoke clears Alma and Luri rushes to search for Matthias. Luckily, Matthias had tanked the explosion, all watching as Iris retrieves the dragon's Magistone, only to officially welcome Iris to their party. Knowing they need to work on their teamwork, Matthias roughs up the training ground, asking Iris to begin training her new body, all whilst protecting a shell on her head. Asking Alma to fire at Iris. Alma is impressed Iris can evade her arrow, but having activated its tracking, the arrow manages to knock down Iris's shell. With Iris giving it another go, she trips over her human body, but refuses to give up. Whilst Iris and Alma train, Luri gets excited hearing she'll learn to craft items for Matthias, only to be given a dragon's claw and some mithril. When Matthias asks Luri to enchant his new blade with 8 spells, Luri cries that it'll be impossible, but Matthias reveals that they'll be layering the spells on different sections of the sword. As Matthias and Luri finish up Matthias's blade, they choose to craft weapons for the others as well, calling them over only for Luri to show off her own newly crafted sword. With Luri shredding through a boulder with her blade, Alma is seen decimating another boulder with her newly enhanced bow, prompting Matthias to give Iris a dull spear that will complement Iris's monstrous strength. Trying out the spear, Iris rushes and pokes at a boulder, immediately decimating the boulder with some torrential force. With Matthias training with the girls and Edouard helping to teach First Academy wordless casting, Matthias utters that he'll be leaving school once the barrier is set up, something Luri takes note of, but elsewhere we see hundreds of demons gathering in a cave, all standing before a mysteriously sealed demon.